Karen. Okay, so without being able to claim host, I'm going to ask everybody, first of all, to mute. And then I'm going to say, welcome to Act via Zoom number 7. It's a timeshare between election and democracy legislation, and part 1 of redistricting, with today being the current legislation and new maps that Alison is going to present. And I'm Carol Sullivan, the facilitator. And you've had the first instruction, mute. And then please add your city or county or league in the rename section there so that we know where in the state of Washington you're coming from. You can put your indigenous lands in the chat if you wish, and I'm on coastal Salish lands. In the email that I sent out this morning, there's a link to it's called Brave New Films. The name of the film that is showing this evening at 7 p.m. is Making a Killing, Greed, Guns, and the NRA. And it's actually happening on the anniversary of the Parkland shootings. So that's something I'm planning to watch it. I think it should be quite interesting. And in a separate email that is yet to come, I am going to be able to send the links to the recorded sessions that we've already had, with the exception of one. I think it expired. Part of my learning curve is to learn that they will expire, but I haven't had control of them all of this time. But it's like I said earlier, it's like a Mount Everest learning curve for me. Next week, the timeshare is going to be between today's guest, Alison McCaffree, with part 2 of Comprehensive Reform for Redistricting, and Cynthia Stewart, who is the League Issue Chair for Housing, Homelessness, Transportation, and Revenue. And as I said before, she is a jack of all trades, and she is master of them all as well. So right now I'd like to introduce our guest for today. Cindy Black has been the executive director of Fixed Democracy First since about 2016. But I didn't know about her before this time, but she was also the campaign director for the very successful statewide 2016 ballot initiative 735 campaign that made Washington State the 18th state to call for a US constitutional amendment that would end court decisions like Citizens United. She's a league member. She's very active with several state and national coalitions. She's a lobbyist for these coalitions and for Fixed Democracy First, that in addressing voting access, money in elections, alternate voting systems, and increasing civic participation. So she wears many hats as well. I also learned that she's a veteran who served in the Air Force, if I'm correct, and I know she has one daughter and lives in Linwood. But you can meet Cindy every Wednesday afternoon from 4 to 6 at the Fixed Democracy First.
Five starts at 5.
Oh, what did I say?
4.
Thank you. Okay, I start thinking about it about 4, and it doesn't go 2 hours. It's just 1 plus a little bit. She is fantastic about reviewing and sharing information about current voting, elections, and democracy news from around the country. And then she sends it out in a nice email. So if you want to read further, you have the access to it. I just love it because she's like my research assistant right there. She's wonderful. The second half of this hour is going to be in the very capable, as I learned, black belt hands of Alison McCaffree. If you had any connection to redistricting last year, as Karen definitely did, it was probably because of Alison, who is the League of Women Voters Washington issue chair for redistricting. Alison began volunteer work very early in life when she was the recipient of a Girl Scout Gold Award. And I looked that up a year or so ago, and it's more difficult to achieve than an Eagle Scout Award. So it really says a lot about Alison. She has mechanical engineering degrees from Stanford and MIT, and an MBA from the Sloan School of Business at MIT. And I think just knowing that makes me understand how she can look at all those little details in those maps and get it down to the one street and the one block, level, because she has that kind of mind that loves those details. And aren't we glad? I look at the big picture, and I'm glad somebody looks at the little details that we need in something like redistricting. She currently leads Politics of the Possible in Action. That's a nonprofit focusing on increasing community engagement and enhancing public knowledge of civics. And as I alluded to, she holds a martial arts black belt. I even saw it once. So Cindy, if you want to take over and start your section, please go ahead.
Thanks, Carol, and thanks for inviting me, and welcome everyone. I'm going to give today a brief overview of what's happening in the state legislature on democracy-related bills. And I know Allison's going to cover a couple of the redistricting bills, so I'm not going to focus too much on those. But that's on my list as well. And then I'll mention briefly some things happening on a national level, but unfortunately, it's very difficult to get anything passed through the Senate right now. So that's a big issue. So let's jump right in. First of all, happy Valentine's Day, everyone. So it is February 14th. And I just took this is from our weekly legislative newsletter. I know the league sends one out too. I always look at the leagues and make sure I have my information correct too. And Cindy Madigan I saw is on the phone, and she covers money and politics issues as well. And Carol is starting to cover more of the election stuff. So welcome, folks, and they're a good resource as well. So just a brief review is tomorrow is the deadline, the cutoff for bills to pass the House of Origin. So House bills need to pass the House, Senate bills need to pass the Senate, and tomorrow is the deadline. So there are some bills that have passed the first chamber and going on to the second chamber, and others still need to get a vote by tomorrow. So the deadline is quick, and it's a short session. We have what's called a biennium. I'm sure Carol's talked about this, and we're in the short session right now. So it'll be wrapping up in early March, just about a month away, a little less than a month. So few bills that are moving forward that we're excited about. One is the Voting Rights Enhancement Act bill, that is Senate Bill 5597. So basically, what's great about this particular bill is it would address a variety of different things, including dealing with vote dilution, especially in communities of color that have been historically underrepresented. It establishes pre-clearance, creates proactive review and analysis of Superior Court or Attorney General to ensure the compliance with the Washington Voting Rights Act that passed in 2018. And it also improves the collection of critical data and creating a database so we can basically review that information. So it's a really important bill. It did pass the Senate on the 10th, which was last week. And so now it's going into the House side. So it has a hearing on February 16th, though I got an email saying it might be the 17th, but I checked this morning and it's still listed at the 16th. So it may change. I know Cindy Madigan is planning to testify at that hearing, but we are recommending people sign in pro for that. And that's, yes.
It was originally scheduled for the 17th, and then they moved it to the 16th.
And then I got another email last night saying it went back to the 17th, but it was very confusing. So I'm sticking with the 16th right now because that's where it's listed. That's where I was able to sign in pro. I saw Cindy Madigan already sign up to testify on that. So right now we're going with the 16th, but it could be moved to the 17th, but that's where we are right now. But
I'm hoping that when you sign in to a committee hearing, that whole page moves, because it's on the bill page. No, it isn't. But I hope it moves wherever they decide to hold the hearing, that sign-in page goes with.
And I realize now in my email blast, I forgot to change this top one, the 17th at 8 a.m. So hopefully people aren't too confused about that, but the link is correct for the 16th hearing. So if you click on that, and I can share that link in the chat in a little bit. So, so that bill is moving forward. It has a good chance of passing the House. So we're very excited about that. Ranked choice voting the local options bill, the Senate bill basically died 5584, but House Bill 1156 that was introduced last year is still moving forward, and we're hoping that it'll be pulled for a floor vote. So we are encouraging people to reach out to their representatives and ask them to pull that for a floor vote and vote yes on that. So again, that's House Bill 1156 that would allow jurisdictions to adopt ranked choice voting in the state, as well as proportional representation system, which would be multi-member districts. So that's the stronger bill. There was an amendment added to the Senate bill that weakened it. So we're kind of happy that the stronger bill is moving forward. So it still has a chance to pass the House, but we're getting down to the wire. The other bill we're getting down to the wire, and these are also many of the league supported bills too and priorities. The advisory votes bill that would eliminate advisory votes from the ballot. Again, that needs to pass the Senate by tomorrow. It did get pulled. It's on the floor calendar, but will it get pulled for a vote? We don't know. Again, tomorrow's the deadline. This would eliminate those. Many of you know it was because of a Tim Eyman initiative added to the ballot, and it's at the beginning. And just basically anytime there's a tax increase, it has to put it on the ballot to say that people want to maintain or appeal it, but the reality is nothing happens with that. It means nothing, those advisory votes. So instead it would be put on the voters pamphlet. And so we're recommending that to happen. So again, that bill needs to pass tomorrow. And then there's a couple of redistricting bills. I'm just going to briefly mention, but I know Allison is going to review that. Both of them have passed their House of Origin and either have a hearing coming up or will have a hearing. That's the one on prison gerrymandering, Senate Bill 5583, and then the one on redistricting plan, Senate Bill 5560. But we know we need a whole lot more than what that bill says. And I know Allison's going to get into the details, and we strongly support that. And we'll be working with the league for stronger redistricting reform going forward. So those two bills are moving forward. We're very excited about that. The election officials protection, it did pass the Senate, and so it's going to be moving to the House Public Safety Committee, but there hasn't been a hearing scheduled yet, but it did pass the Senate. So this would make harassment of election officials a Class C felony when it's directed at an official within the Secretary of State or a county auditor's office. So that bill is moving forward, and we're just waiting for a hearing in the House Public Safety Committee. There's also a couple other bills that we've been talking about. I don't think the league has taken a position on odd year elections, but we are supporting that, and that would eliminate odd year elections and just have elections during the even years. That basically, because that's when most people turn out. We have very low voter turnout during odd year elections, and so this would be one thing to hopefully strengthen voter turnout. So again, that bill has not passed the House, and it is on the calendar, but we don't know if it's going to pass yet. So we'll see about that one. And then a bill that I know the league does support is the eliminating the sunsetting of the last two community councils in the state, one that's in Kirkland and one that's in East Bellevue. That's House Bill 1769. It just passed the House over the weekend, and now it's going to be referred to the Senate Housing and Local Government Committee, but it does not have a hearing. So basically, there's two remaining community councils left in the state, and they have a lot of veto power and can basically just control their own area. And it's just really an undemocratic process. I know the league has been supporting this bill as well and have testified in favor of it. So that bill did pass the Senate, or I'm sorry, the House over the weekend. And then the public disclosure bill that I know Cindy Madigan is here. She knows quite a bit of that. That bill has been added to the House floor calendar. That's House Bill 1919. But that has not gotten a vote yet, but we're pretty sure that's probably going to pass the House and move over to the Senate So again, that would just update reporting deadlines and clarifying some things about political ads and so forth. And I know Cindy Madigan is here, as I said, and she knows a lot about this bill. So those are the bills that we've been following that are actually still alive. Unfortunately, there were some bills that we were very disappointed that didn't pass. One was the secure automatic voter registration bill. That was Senate Bill 5636. They couldn't just, the Secretary of State had some issues with it. And then there was some issues around funding for the Department of Licensing. This would basically have strengthened the voter registration bill that we passed back in 2018 in the state, to make it where if someone proved their citizenship through a passport or a birth certificate while they're the Department of Licensing, they would be automatically registered to vote on the back end. And no one would have to ask the person there. They would just get something in the mail. So it's a similar system to Oregon and Colorado. And so we'll be working on that bill this year. And hopefully that will be reintroduced in the next session, because any bill that doesn't pass this session will all have to be reintroduced next session. So that's an important thing to remember. And then things like the local options for presidential primaries did not pass. There were some bills around prohibiting weapons at election offices didn't pass. Putting conservation districts on the ballot did not pass.
Oh, shoot.
I'm sorry. Someone say something?
No, accident.
Okay, close the lobbying revolving door did not move forward, and unfortunately, Women's Suffrage Day did not move forward. So that's what's happening with the bills in the legislature. And again, there's still some good bills still alive. And then briefly, I just want to mention that on a federal level, there are a lot of bills that have been introduced. I just have a list here, and there's money in politics bills. And I'm not even going to go over these. There's just way too many bills, but I just wanted to show you there's a ton of money in politics bills that would address disclosure, limiting money, asking for a constitutional amendment, expanding Democracy Dollars Act. There's a variety of bills in money in elections. There's also a ton of voting and election bills. As most of you know, the Freedom to Vote Act and the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act did not move forward. It was combined at the end, and unfortunately they were filibustered and did not go through. So there are some still bills on the table, but again, with the way the Senate is right now and the filibuster, it's unlikely that any of these bills will pass, at least with the current Congress the way it is. But as you can see, the list goes on. There are many, 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 many bills. Excuse me. And there's also a bunch of redistricting bills, ethics and lobbying bills, government reforms, and all of that good stuff. So lots of bills on the federal level. Unfortunately, they're just not moving forward. Some of them have a good chance of passing the House, but unfortunately, they're not going to pass the Senate. So there is going to continue to be a push as things move forward. The Freedom to Vote and the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Acts are going to maybe be broken up. And there's a lot of talk about the Electoral Count Act and revamping that, which needs to happen, but it doesn't replace dealing with the voting restrictions that are happening around the country. So I will stop my share there and see if there's some questions going on. Oh, and Carol mentioned our democracy happy hour, and I'll put a link in the chat to that. We do host those every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. I cover democracy in the news, and then I cover a particular topic, and then there's a lot of time for open discussion. This week's topic coming up is the rise of authoritarianism in the US. And then next week is voter fraud versus election fraud. What's the difference? And talk about the realities of both of those things. So if there's any questions or comments, I'm also going to put the link in to sign in pro for the Senate Bill 5597 link to sign in pro for that as well. Questions, comments?
I have a question. You answered my first one because I wanted to know what was happening at Fixed Democracy First on Wednesday. Thank you. Um, I'm curious about 1727, the odd year election, no odd year elections. Who opposes that and why? Because I'm just that part.
Yeah, well, it depends on who you talk to. It's a variety of people. I mean, I've seen many of the conservatives that have been coming out against that particular bill, but there's some auditors that are worried about that, but some auditors are in favor of that. Some people are concerned that what about having to lay people off in between, but we think that can be worked out. So I think it's mixed, but we're seeing conservatives come out against it. Tim Iman's against it because he likes to run initiatives every year. So that's who I've seen. Cindy, do you know if any other people, Cindy Madigan, I think she's still here. Do you know of any other folks that are against that? I'd have to go back and look at the testimony. But it's being sponsored by, let me make sure, I'm sorry. I want to make sure I'm giving the right details on that. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my other bill information to make sure I have the correct sponsor on that one. I believe that's Gregerson. Yeah, Mia Gregerson. So communities of color really like this because they're seeing some of the lowest voter turnout in their communities and they think this will increase. But then you have, you know, some political wonks that are saying, oh, I don't think so. And some local jurisdictions with special districts have some issues about it as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. That I'm just not sure exactly why we are not supporting it. Maybe because I wasn't.
I don't know. I don't know if the league has done a study on that yet or not. So
No,
that might
that might be the reason. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see.
And I'm putting the link for the enhancements to the Voting Rights Act link where you can sign in pro. I'm sorry, it didn't actually link correctly. Let me try that again. There you go. There's the link. You can click on that.
We had a question. We have a question. Jeannie has her hand raised, but also we had a question in the chat. Can you sign up? If you sign up once for pro, have you signed up for that bill, you know, forever? Or do you just, I think you can just, you need to sign up each committee hearing because it's before a different group of people.
Exactly. You do have to sign up, even if you signed up in the Senate, when they had a hearing, you still have to sign in when it's having an opposite chamber. So if you signed in one hearing and there's a new hearing, or if it goes to Ways and Means or other committees, you do have to sign in pro at each hearing to let people know your support. So I did put the correct link in the chat for that Senate Bill 5597.
And does anybody know, is there a way to remove your pro if you realize you've done it twice? I mean, I've seen people do it 3 times.
It doesn't matter if you do it multiple times. I accidentally did it 3 times once because I was signing in for so many bills and I realized I'd already signed in for that one. What you can do is when you go to, let me pull up, I'm going to pull up one and share my screen and kind of show you.
There's a way to check.
Yeah, I'm going to show you right now. So hold on one second. I'm going to pull up my screen again and show folks how you do that. So you don't need to see my bill tracker sheet here. That's from the, get out of there. Okay. So let me go back to this screen. So for example, here's a Voting Rights Act. I'm on the page, the House Committee sign-in sheet. And so I got that clicked. And if I go to down here, who has signed in for this agenda item? And I click here, see, we can see Cindy Madigan already signed in pro to testify. And then you can go down here and look at all the pros and cons who've signed in. There's a lot of cons right now, and many of these are from conservative groups. So you can check, you can actually look up by your name and see if you already signed in, or you can see which organization signed in.
Put your name in, Cindy, and see what happens in that search thing, right?
In
up
the
there.
search, if you see,
Yeah.
type in Cindy, there I am.
And
Cindy
people,
Black,
please
signed
put
in.
yourself on mute. I have no control of it. You have to do it yourself.
So that's how you would check under each bill.
Oh, I see Mark Holtz, who's a Mount Vernon City Council person voting con. Yeah, that's interesting. You can see.
So yeah, you can, you can see all the different folks. You can check by name, you
But
can
if she
check by
puts-
organization, you can go who signed in con, who signed in pro, and you can also see the time that they signed in.
I didn't know that part, so thank you. But if you wrote your whole name in there, it would show in the very bottom down at the page there that you have signed in.
Yeah, you can check to see if
can-
you've signed in, if you don't remember if you've done that or not. And again, that's for any bill. So if you click on here, that's not bill, but any bill, you can just click on any of them and go down to here and say who was signed in for this agenda, and you can see that. Unfortunately, it doesn't list who signed in, like who submitted written testimony, because I submit written testimony quite often if I can't make a hearing. But it doesn't list that. So I'm not sure why.
Okay.
But here you could say, this is also where you select, I just want to make my position noted, where you just sign in pro or con, but you can also testify. You say, I like to testify remotely, like Cindy Madigan did, or here I'd like to submit written testimony. If you go to written testimony, it gives you a place to where you put in your pro, puts all your information, address, and then you can copy and paste or type in your written testimony there.
And Jane is asking for the ranked choice voting. Actually, it's a bill. If you put in if you know the bill number, 1156.
Yeah, it's
put
right
that in.
here. Yeah, here's
There it is,
1156. And if you go down to the bottom, you can see where it is. On 7th, which is a week ago, the rules was relieved from further consideration, means it got out of rules and it was placed on a second reading, means it could go to the floor for a vote. That's what that means.
We're getting almost to our halfway point.
Yeah, so there's a couple
More
questions.
here.
Let's see if we can answer a couple questions real quick.
How do you know that a bill might be, like you were talking about, I think 1919? How do you know that? I mean, how do you gather that sense? Where does, there's some other, we haven't gotten to Jean. Let's drop that question and go to Jean. I'm sorry, Jean.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. I want to go back to the bill about eliminating odd year elections. And has any other state done it, and what were the results? I asked about that when we were in the elections office last week and talked to them about it as well. My concern is that it makes for a really long ballot, especially as long as we have advisory votes on the ballot. And so I would like to get more information about that. And I would like for the league to do a study. However, quickly it can be done, and provide more information about it. I'm very much on the fence about it.
Yeah, Jean, that's a good point. That was one of the other arguments, is there were people concerned that the ballot length would be too long. So that was another one of the complaints about it. But you're right. If we don't get rid of advisory votes, it could be a super long ballot, and people would be what they call like ballot exhaustion, where they go, I don't want to get through the whole thing. So that is an issue. I don't know about other states. I'd have to research that a little bit.
Thank you. I think that's a very good point, Jean. Thank you for bringing it up. Jim, do you have a question? And we have to make it a quick question.
Okay.
Got time.
On voting pro, when do you know if you can vote pro on a bill? Can you just go to any, whether there's a hearing or not, scheduled and vote pro?
You only can vote pro if there's an actual hearing, but you can always submit comments to any bill at the top of the bill page. Like I put in the one for 1156. So if you click on that, you'll see at the top, you can go comment on that bill, and you can comment, it'll send comments, submit your comment. So you can always submit your comment on a bill anytime, but you can only sign in pro if there's an actual hearing.
And they do publicize those pros and cons, the numbers. They're looking at the numbers, and you hear it in the committee hearings. So, okay, having no further questions, I would very much like to turn the other half of our timeshare meeting, and I so appreciate the flexibility that the presenters have shown. It's been kind of a balancing act, and people's schedules change or their power is out, so things are nice when people share like this. So Alison, it's your turn, and thank you so much, Cindy. I will see you on Wednesday.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely day. I'm going to hop off and get some other work done.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you.
All right, can you hear me, Carol?
Yes, and I'm going to ask people to be sure they're muted. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Thank you, everyone, for spending your Monday mornings doing advocacy stuff. That's great. As Carol said, thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm Alison McCaffree. I'm the League of Women Voters of Washington State Redistricting Issue Chair, and have been working on comprehensive redistricting reform since for the League since 2017. Got my start with my grandmother back in 2006, who taught me all about redistricting. So if you haven't read her book, Politics of the Possible, definitely pick it up. So I just, like Cindy, I was just going to quickly go through the bills and why we're watching these for redistricting. Let's see. Why don't we have a show of hands of people who came to my talk on lobby week for this? Do we have lots of people where this would be repeat, either physical hand or electronic hand? Yeah, it looks like one, maybe half of you whose video is on. Okay. So I'm happy to go into more detail, but I'll just go through stuff briefly and then let your questions guide where we go. As Carol said, I'm going to spend this half hour just talking about the current bills and the current maps and some of the lawsuits that are on those current maps. And then next week, we're going to talk in more detail about what does comprehensive redistricting reform look like. And so you can get a sense of it. I am having a meeting on the 22nd to go through this in even more detail if you want to join me on that evening Zoom call. And I'll put a link in the chat too. Okay, so standard, our talking points on redistricting. Redistricting is where your voting power starts. It's so important because it affects every other issue. If we have good maps, then you can elect the person you want to represent you. Then that person works on the issues that you care about. So it really is fundamental. We want to make sure we're emphasizing just how important it is to every issue, and not let the complexity, Carol mentioned the details, right? Not let the complexity stop you from saying that you care about it. You don't have to know on any bill, but particularly redistricting and process bills, you don't have to know the details. You don't have to be able to draw a map. You just have to say, this is important to me, and I want to be able to elect a person I feel like would represent me, which is the whole point of representative democracy. So the bills we're watching or supporting are 5560, which is a change that would fix the most egregious problem that happened with the Redistricting Commission at the end, where they had no time, no visibility to their maps. They voted on something that was a list in their brains about what they were voting on. And this bill fixes that. It is just the very, very minimum to say we've done something to change the process so that what happened at the end of the Redistricting Commission won't happen again. So we support the change. It's not that it's not a good change. It's just the whole point is comprehensive reform so that the process is more transparent and more reflective of what communities wanted, and that we know as a public, we know what things were debated and how it came about. And this could mean both process change that we can change in regular law and maybe structural change, i.e. who's sitting on the commission to make the decisions, structural change, which means we need a state constitutional amendment. So we need more than this. But as the advocacy person, I'm trying to say, we need lots and lots and lots and lots of people to sign in to say, I care about redistricting. I'm watching what's going on with redistricting. I heard in the last committee meeting, we got 205 people to sign in pro at the Senate meeting, which I thought was great, until the Voting Rights Act got 1,500 people to sign in. And the gun bills, all important, right? Got 10,000 people to sign in. So think of the difference. Even though this is really fundamental, it's not top of mind. It's not what the legislators are paying attention to unless we tell them to do it. And so that's why I think this is so important to understand. It's not just about this bill. It's about, this is an opportunity to tell legislators you care about redistricting and you're watching them. So with that, I am going to give you 2 minutes of my time to sign in right now. I'm going to put the link in the chat. It doesn't take more than 2 minutes. Here's the direct link to the House committee. Make sure somebody try it, make sure that this one works, but House Committee 5560, sign in pro and put in your email address. Let me know if there's any issues. My goal is to try to get 400 people to sign in. Karen's saying it looks like it works. Karen, are you going to testify?
Oh, I haven't signed up yet for this one, so I will. I did last time. I probably need to again.
Your testimony was great. It's Thursday morning. Looks like it'll be second or third up, so it'll probably be around 11 o'clock, 11:30.
Okay,
Cool.
done. It takes that long. And I think
Carol's done. Okay.
Right.
Yes. Let's see.
I think this
No
is
rush,
the second time
but-
I've done it, but oh well.
Pro your name. That's all it is. I care. You're basically saying, I'm watching you. I care about redistricting and I'm watching you. And because we're pro, because it's a good change, but it's just so minuscule to what they need. Okay, anyone else? I'm looking on. Yes, we're supporting Ola. We're supporting this bill. We do want to say thank you to the senators who brought it up, right? And said, yes, we do need to recognize that something went wrong in the process. And they did negotiate bipartisan.
The easy way to make those sign into committees and everything happen so fast is to put it in autofill. And I can't tell you where to find that because I don't remember if I did it.
But be
find
careful
it,
because
and then it makes it a snap.
always double check because you can have different autofills. I sent a package to my parents one time unmistakably because of autofill. Okay.
Yeah, that's when you have to scroll down to say you're not a robot, check it. But
yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next one, which is the local redistricting. Cindy called it prison anti-gerrymandering. And that's essentially what it is. People in prisons or group hospitals or other group homes get reallocated back to their home district. It's just basic, people should be counted in the communities where they actually live. Nobody's in, not everybody's in a prison for the whole 10 years kind of thing. And most prisons are in rural areas and most people in prison come from urban areas. So there's a gerrymandering effect there. So we will also send out a link for that when the committee gets scheduled, and you can sign in pro for that. Sorry, whoops. This just makes sense. We did this for the state level that I work on. It makes sense to do it at the at the city and county level. I was actually surprised that Spokane County did not adjust their maps for this thing. About 18,000 people got adjusted. Okay, then the third one was one that Cindy talked about, which was the Voting Rights Act. This is a lot of technical details, and people who work on voting rights laws, you almost need to be a lawyer to understand the details of it. But it's a redistricting bill because it's saying if you draw the districts wrong and my particular group gets disenfranchised because of it, can't vote the people in that we want to, then how do we remedy that? What are our legal obligation or legal recourse? So this is really important to understand, and Senator Saldana is definitely in the thick of it, trying to get the best deal for, in this case, in our current maps, it's Latinos in the Yakima area who are, it appears, do not have a chance to vote in who they want, in combination with the Yakima Nation folks who got put all in one district, but got put with a district that the rest of their district probably will not vote in the way that the Yakima Nation has historically voted. They voted more with the Latino voters. So it's a really interesting thing. So we're supporting this. Absolutely do everything you can to help get the strongest bill passed for the voting rights enhancement as well. The last one I want to mention, and we can go on to MAP specifically, is House Concurrent Resolution 4407. This is the official touch of the legislature itself on the redistricting maps. I got information from one legislator that yes, these were all changes requested by auditors, and our county auditors are the ones that now have to do precincts and get all the ballots ready and all that. So they are looking at that. I mean, they know where those lines are. So, and because they know all the pain points about, oh, you just created a 5-person precinct for me, right? And they grew. So they request these changes. They're very small. The legislature can only change a district by less than 2% of the population. These were changed even less, like 1 person, 5 people kind of thing, 50 people. So what was annoying about, I didn't finish my second bullet there, but what was annoying about this was just how the lack of visibility, the quickness of the vote, they just like, it's a housekeeping vote. So people watching redistricting, already annoyed by the commission not having visibility, saw this hit the get dropped in the House, 2 days later get voted, rules suspended, or get voted on the floor, rules suspended, get final vote, move it to the Senate. 2 days later, the Senate does the same thing and passes them. And the bill has no plain word explanation, like lots of bills do with a staff person. There's none of that, right? Not even, these are the technical changes requested by auditors. We think the most important ones are, right? I, who know the maps really well, couldn't even figure out which block they were talking about in my own neighborhood, right? Because it is so technically, you have to know census block detailed numbers, right? And I'm still trying to figure it out, right? So it just doesn't seem like good process, even though this doesn't affect very many people. Those 50 people that got changed in their district, it affects them. So shouldn't we know? Shouldn't we have visibility that this is, it's completely within the law, but it just doesn't sit right. Okay, so any questions on those bills before we go into the maps themselves?
Alison, I don't understand the second point.
I think I just didn't
Population
I didn't
is.
it was like change is 50 people. I think that's what I was trying to say.
Okay, thank you.
I think I looked it up and then I didn't write it in my slide. Laura. And
Okay,
then
could you go back to the second one, the vote dilution?
Yeah. The second one, vote dilution was this one? Yeah, this is our Voting Rights Act one. Is this the one you were talking about?
Well, I don't see
share
it.
again,
I just
please.
see you.
Oh,
Which
oh,
I'm
oh,
happy
did
to
I?
look at.
I'll screen share again. Hold on.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
There we go.
Okay. Tell me about, because this was the one that I'm voting pro and had no real idea, or whatever we were doing, voting pro. And I'm like, really, if they asked me anything, I couldn't explain it. Tell me what pre-clearance and fee payments are.
So pre-clearance is a term coined in the Federal Voting Rights Act in 1965, which says any jurisdiction who wants to change voting rights laws needs to ask the courts or the Department of oh, help me out here. Or the federal department, hey, we're going to do this. Can you tell us it's okay?
Okay.
And that way the lawsuits don't come because they get okayed.
And this would be at the state level then.
Now, this one is at the state level. So this would you'd get the state court system to pre-clear, or the Attorney General's office to pre-clear the change you want to put in law, so that you don't get someone suing on that change, right? So it's a way, and as the late Justice Ginsburg said, she said, it's been working, right? And we've had this umbrella to protect Voting Rights Act since 1965. So it worked at the federal level. They've taken it away at the federal level. Let's put it in at the state level.
And the fee payment?
This has to do with the communities that usually get, I'm going to use the vernacular, screwed, are the ones that can't afford lawyers. So this allows for, this allows for them to pay the lawyer fees.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And then Lisa?
Yeah, so I'm just on 4407.
Mhm.
Are you asking us to comment on the fact that there was no public visibility to our people, or what are you asking for?
Yeah, I want to use this as more outrage, why we need comprehensive redistricting reform. That even in this small technical fix process, there's no visibility. So let's, they just passed in the Senate, they just passed 5560 that said the commission has to have visibility to their plans. And then they didn't do it themselves for these technical fixes.
Follow
Now,
through.
right? Right. And I get it. The House and the Senate both have housekeeping bills, right? There's lots of stuff that the legal brains say, oh, we need to fix this, no, it's not controversial. It passes with, no dissent. But you just made the other bill that said the commission shouldn't be non-transparent. So you shouldn't either, even on this one. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
So should that be directed at a committee or just at our legislators?
Your personal legislator.
Your personal legislator.
That legislator. I think that's where it's most, hey, now, so check to see if your person voted pro or voted for or against it. There were 7 people in the House that voted against it, this resolution, right? And there were 14 senators that voted against it. There were kind of protest votes on the maps. Now, I don't know that, but I would love to know that. So if you can get to your representative, that's the one that's going to care about your comments the most. And this can be tomorrow, or it can be in the interim, right? Why did you vote against? Why did you vote for? It looks like leadership needed to get it through, needed to get it done. So everybody who was in leadership voted for it, and it passed. So.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question in the chat. Are there costs to the jurisdictions to seek pre-clearance? That's going back to the other bill.
Cindy, I don't know the answer to that. I would assume
I
that you-
think part of it is that they will prevent costs of legislation or, court battles and all those associated costs if they get
Yeah.
pre-clearance and find out if what they want to do is
you,
legal.
and
fits
this
in
one
the-
got amended too,
that right?
Cindy. This one got amended. So certainly it's trying to prevent lots of costs further down the line. But you still probably need a lawyer, someone on staff to put your pre-clearance paperwork together, right? And go to the Attorney General. So it's got to be lawyerly minds, go to the Attorney General, say, here, this is what we want to do. So it's not like it's not free of staff time.
Yeah, right. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking about using that in my testimony because they're also worried about having those fees that the smaller jurisdictions won't be having access to the costs, to anything to help defend it. But if we can really focus on pre-clearance, would be a way, like Carol said, of avoiding the lawsuits. That seems like that would be the least costly.
The reason
okay,
I thought that was the whole point of it, was the pre-clearance, so that they wouldn't be faced with those larger costs down the line. But I don't know the answer. That's a really good question, Cindy. Of course.
Yeah, that's one we should know, the three of us.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Lisa? Your hand's still up. I assume that's from before.
From before. So Cindy, I had a question. What maps are actually being used, Cindy? I mean, Allison. What maps are actually being used now? I mean, I know that my representative, one of my two representatives, is no longer, or was no longer, in the first district. And I don't know if that was whose map that was according to. Is that the,
so I
where are we on that?
On the League of Women Voters website, the state website, on my maps page, so leagueofwomenvoters.org/maps, you can find the links to these Dave's redistricting. This is the best I could develop. Let's go to the congressional ones first. This is the best I could develop to compare old and new. So you're staring at the congressional districts. The dark lines are last decades. The color is the ones from this time. Everybody got that? That's what we're looking at.
Significant changes to the 8th then, or
right. So that you'll notice from this large view, you've got Snohomish, Skagit, Snohomish, and King County on the east side are now part of the 8th. That's probably the biggest change. You've got what was in the 4th is now in the 5th over here. Pasco and up into Franklin and Adams here. You've got Klickitat out of the 3rd and into the 4th, which is not something most folks wanted along the border, but it does make sure that the Yakima Nation is all in one. Let me zoom in. You can zoom in as much as you want, right? So I always kind of recenter it. Let me turn off these lines I've got shown are precinct lines. That's usually default. So on the left-hand side of Dave's redistricting, you can choose what you want on and off. So I've got the background map on. If you need to see the background map a little more, you can turn down the opacity of your colors. Then as you zoom in, I was going to show you the 9th. This did remain a majority non-white district, but they did take the Pierce County part of the 9th out, gave it to the 6th because it needed more people. And they came down a little bit here, more the 1st, but they left Congressman Adam Smith in his district. So there was no upset there. And then probably the biggest change once you zoom in here is, especially for the group in Northwest, right, is what they did to the second and the first. So you've got this used to be the first, all of the East Side stuff. Now
So
yeah, go ahead.
have the changes taken place? Is it official now? I'm so kind of behind the
So
ball on this.
yeah, it's interesting. So there was lots of back and forth. The commission missed their deadline. They officially sent it to the courts, but they finished their maps that they said they were happy with. The courts, who had till April to decide new maps, said, in the interest of process and getting to the election, we're going to accept the maps that the commission did because they weren't that late. Their homework wasn't that late. And so then the maps stand, and the legislature just changed a little bit the technical fixes, which at this level you would never know. That's where I'm trying to find out, those 50 people that got switched care, but we don't really know where that is. But there are essentially 2 lawsuits against the commission. One that probably won't change the maps. The other could if successful.
And who is bringing that lawsuit?
Yeah, so let me explain those 2 lawsuits. So the first lawsuit is by the Coalition for Open Government in state court against the commission for lack of transparency, for breaking the law, the Open Public Meetings law. And so they're looking for remedies. They're looking to fine the commissioners. They're looking to change the process so that it doesn't happen again. It's unclear that one would actually result in throwing out the maps. And I'm not a lawyer, but I've read the lawsuit. It's still unclear to me if that would be a remedy that would be considered if they were successful. So that they applied directly to the state Supreme Court, who declined to hear it directly and kicked it back down to the lower court. So it has to go through the process and get back up to the state Supreme Court to be decided, right? If it happens, that on what the remedy might be.
But that could take its time. We don't care so much.
Yeah. So that happening before these elections is very low, very, very low. And then the second one is a federal court lawsuit against these maps in particular and the Yakima area 14th and 15th districts for the vote dilution we were talking about in that voting rights bill. So they're using the Federal Voting Rights Act to say you're violating, you're discriminating, and that has to go through the federal courts. Here's the catch. The US Supreme Court just voted in Alabama that they were too close to the election to change the maps. They didn't actually vote on the discrimination piece of Alabama. So even though the 3-judge panel below said, yes, absolutely change the maps, the Supreme Court said, no, you're too close to the elections. So the likelihood of this one making it all the way to the Supreme Court before the election is low. But even if it did, the likelihood they'll just point to the Alabama decision and say it's too close. And we're nine months out from the elections, right? So how far out is too close is precedent setting, I guess. So that being said, these maps are the maps for the November election. For all intents and purposes, you need to figure out who your new legislator, your district is, who the legislators are running in that district, and try to vote in the people that you think will represent you the best. Laura, go ahead.
Okay, so when they said it was too close, this could still apply to next elections. It could still be put out for next election.
Sure. So Alabama will come back Washington
Okay.
State's will work its way through. Maybe it gets to the Supreme Court at a different time, right? The history of the last decade was a long and arduous one of maps being drawn and elections being set. And then those elections give all the statistical people more firepower to say, hey, look, the Latino community didn't vote in the people they wanted. It was clearly right. So then they use that next election to do some more court fighting. And yeah, it's a whole pastime if you want to follow all these redistricting court processes. Yeah.
Okay, I
Aruna.
just wanted to make sure it wasn't frozen for 10 years. It's like, oh, you missed your window. Too bad. All
Well,
right,
you
thank
can
you.
always sue for any time and try to get the courts to remedy it at any point,
Mm,
but it's challenging. And we're always close to the next election.
right.
Aruna, go ahead.
Yeah, Aruna, go ahead.
No, it was a mistake. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to spend, I know we're right at the hour. There's also a link to the legislative maps, which have more detail and more changes. So I highly recommend that you zoom in. Somebody was already saying, this is where you zoom in, put the opacity down, find your own house, right? The maps around your own house. And somebody was saying they moved, right? So the first is different. The first goes from kind of a mushroom shaped to kind of a check mark shaped, right? So find out where those are. That would be my best guess. You will be sent a notice. You will be given a ballot, right? But the sooner you know which district you're going to be in, the better, because then you can start figuring out who it is you're trying to influence or who it is you might be voting for. So questions on that, and we'll close.
I had a question for the District 10 voters in Skagit area. I know there are two candidates challenging Greg Gilday, or will be challenging him.
Mhm.
Are they both still in District 10 after the redistricting? That's
I do-
that's kind of a specific question, and it doesn't.
Well,
have to be-
here, I do have a special overlay that
I don't know where
can-
they live, so
but I do. So if I turn on my overlay of their addresses,
you know those two candidates though.
we can see.
But do
So
you
we
know
have-
their?
We
Yeah,
have Gregory who lives there, Paul that lives there. And,
oh, that's interesting. Who knew?
and I don't know, who's the other 10?
Well, it's Greg Gilday and Dave Paul, but there are two candidates who will be challenging.
Oh,
Greg
yeah. So
Gilday.
you'd have, oh, you said candidates, not legislators.
And
So
his
yeah,
name
you-
is Gregory, it's Gilday is the last name, so that's the wrong last name.
presumably if they're running in the 10th, then they know that they're in the 10th and they've looked at the maps just like you or I did, right? 'Cause
Well,
they've got a-
they were both in the 10th before redistricting. I don't know. I was just asking the question, are they both still in? Because
Hmm.
I know it's changed up here around, I can't quite see Mount Vernon and Burlington.
So
exactly,
we're,
but they're in
yeah.
that Mount Vernon, Burlington area. One of them is anyway. The other one's
here's our
down
Mount,
farther on Woodby Island.
here's our
So,
Mount Vernon cut. They didn't make it any better.
yeah, well, I wouldn't know their address anyway.
Yeah.
It was just a
So-
question for those.
Getting, yeah, if somebody knows them or can get to their campaigns, that's an interesting question. Okay.
Just a question. Okay. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Well, we'll see you next week, Allison, because we want to learn more about
next Monday.
com-
All right.
yeah, comprehensive reform.
Thanks, everybody.
And thank you so much for being here, everybody. And I'm going to hang around for a few minutes. I don't have a way to do breakout rooms anyway today, so whatever. It's
Carol,
nice.
are you on the State League Zoom?
Yes. And last week I could claim host. One of the other times I could see the place where you put in the code for claiming host, but my mouse wouldn't let my mouse click there. I mean, it's been hit and miss. I've a couple of times, no problem. And today I don't know what the trick is. So,
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
have
I was
that
gonna say,
skill
make sure
yet.
you- But you have the code if you can figure out how to.
Yeah,
post.
yeah, and last week it just showed up in the little participant screen share, record, all of that stuff. I would like to be able to stop recording now, and I can't really do that. Oh, wait, let's see. No, I do see now where there's, but I don't know how to stop the recording. Anyway, so it just means I have to edit it, and I'm learning that, and I don't know if you heard me say it's like climbing Mount Everest for me, and I am not an 8th grader anymore.
Well, if I find some instructions on host stuff, maybe I'll zip them to you. That
Last year I had the experience of having it on my own computer and setting everything up myself, and I could do polls and breakout rooms, and I had skills, but this year I don't have the control, so anyway.
Yeah, it's all about, can you claim the host?
It's all about control, right?
Can you? Yeah, so one
I-
suggestion is you get the login so that you are logging in to that account. Then by
Maybe-
definition,
yeah.
you're the host.
I'll see if either Amy or Stephanie could help me with that
Yeah.
before next time, because it's, I thought it was not a problem anymore, but then it shows up being a problem, so.
Yeah, okay, see you
Okay,
next
thanks.
week.
We'll see you next week then. Thank you. And I was wondering if Jim, do you have any idea? Are you still there? Maybe? I wonder if you have any idea about the question I was asking about. Are the two candidates, anybody from that area know?
No, I I don't.
Or are they
have-
both viable candidates?
That has not been brought up at any meeting. We had an e-board meeting last week, and but that was not brought up at all. So I'll poke that notion out to Lynn and some others, and maybe we'll be able to figure that out. I don't know their addresses. If I knew their addresses, I could probably search it on the map.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it might, I don't know where, I think it's Ashley that I'm wondering if she still lives in the district. That was my main question, really.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
So check it out.
I will, and I'll let you know.
Okay,
Okay,
okay, good, thanks.
you bet, thank you.
I'm gonna talk to Edwina. I don't know, Cindy, I know had to be on some phone calls, so she might just be hanging out, and I don't know. Karen, I'm not sure where Karen is from. And Aisha, you're in the Snohomish area. I don't know if these people are just hanging out. Yeah, Karen, where are you? No, she's not. I know that Aisha is from the Snohomish League, but I'm not sure about Karen. I think she might be maybe she is too. Anyway, Edwina, how are you? There's Cindy, you're back. Okay.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I've been in and out. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, good. Thank you so much. Yeah, did you mean Karen Crowley? Did you want to know where she was from?
She's in
Or no?
Snohomish.
Oh, okay. You
Yeah.
had a question on somebody else.
Well, no, I was trying to figure out, my question was, there are two candidates running for to oppose Greg Gilday. And
Yeah.
with the redistricting changing, places in Mount Vernon and in Burlington area, and I think Ashley lives in Burlington. I remember she found she couldn't run for the city council there because she was not in the city limits. Although her address, her mailing address was Burlington. Anyway.
Yeah.
It seemed like I had a question for Cindy, but I can't think of what it is right now. Oh, well. Yeah.
Well, good
So-
job. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I, appreciate everyone showing up for today. And
yeah, thank you for adding questions and comments that we questions that we don't know the answer to, but it does get pretty technical and it's.
I know. It's kind of a question I should know the answer to, but I was
Oh,
hoping Allison did.
That's a very good question, though. Really, I wonder if Cindy knows that. Anyway, I'm about ready to sign off because I'm tired. So,
All right. Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much. Bye. See you
Okay, I wanna-
later.
yeah.
Bye
I'll
all.
for just a minute more. Jim, do you just have your arm behind your back? Thank you. Pretty sure you hadn't lost an arm in the week. Anyway, Edwina, how are things going for you?
Yeah, I just have to,
There you go. Yeah,
Everything's fine,
good. Yeah, we still.
looking forward to the move being over, Now
Okay.
there's the anxiety of,
Are you actually going to move?
yes.
And when is your move date?